Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Policy and Oversight Board. My name's Councillor Lisa Homan, and I am Chair of the Oversight Board and Policy Unit. We've got a lot of guests with us this evening, so you're all very welcome. If there's anybody watching, just to make sure that everybody is comfortable that we are live streaming, so you will be on YouTube this evening. So if you don't wish to be on YouTube, then just sit very quietly. But we're assuming that you're agreeing to be as part of the meeting. Just a couple of housekeeping arrangements. Should the fire alarm go, then we need to leave through the doors on the right-hand side and go down the stairs, and we will be exiting to just outside of the building. If anybody needs assistance, please let any of the officers in the building know, and there's quite a few officers dotted about, and they will help you to leave the building. And could I ask anybody when they speak, if you could just say who they are, and that includes officers, because sometimes officers don't always say who they are. I think that's probably the housekeeping. So first of all, could I ask, are there any apologies for absence?
That's Trey and Robotham, and apologies for lateness.
Okay, thank you. No other apologies from absence, no. Could I ask if there are any declarations of interest that anybody on the committee needs to declare? No. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any matters of accuracy that anybody wants to raise out of the previous meeting? Just the November meeting? No? Okay, are those agreed?
Agreed.
Great, lovely, thank you very much. So that leads me to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is, it says update on Youth Voice, but it's kind of a bit more than an update. And I know you guys are going to give us a lovely presentation in a minute. If I could just say a little bit about why this is slightly different to the CPAC, the Children's Services pack that you will have been presenting to before. And I think I've met most of you either online or in person at the last meeting when some of you contributed to a piece of work we were doing on intergenerational working. The point, I think, of you coming and presenting to us tonight is you've actually got all of the chairs of all of the policy and accountability committees here in front of you, who cover all the different areas which the council works on. So it could be housing, it could be adult social care, it could be the environment, but everybody is here this evening. What we want to take away from you is how all of this work that you've been doing and all of the ideas that you've been developing, which have been fantastic, because I think we have seen a presentation at full council recently. We want to make sure that we try and embed as much of that in council policy as we possibly can, and that all the people that are strategically responsible go away with an idea of how we can work with all of those fantastic ideas that you've been developing and that you're building into your action plan. So that's, I think, how it all started out back in July when I had a conversation with some of you online. So that's why we're here this evening. So we're looking forward to your presentation, but I think if you want to ask us questions about how we can make some of your ideas work, we're very open to that as well. So Brenda, over to you, I believe, to start the... Mike, Brenda, thanks.
Like this, sorry, I've never done this before. Is it working now? I'm Brenda Winnett and I'm the Borough's Youth Voice Coordinator. I support our amazing youth council. Having been in the role for a good number of years now, it's an absolute delight to see the progression for Youth Voice and to see the young people's efforts and priorities really driving the direction of travel. So really big thank you for everyone for allowing us to come along this evening and for the support that you've given us so far. Over to the young people.
Hi everyone, my name is Anastasia. I'm the bit feedback. I'm the member of Youth Parliament, and we're really excited today to be able to come and give you guys an update. But before I do, I just want the rest of you to introduce yourself while you're here. Go ahead, just go down.
So my name is Edaf and I've been a youth councillor for about 2 years now and I've really enjoyed it so far. Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Precisa. I joined Youth Council about a year ago now. Yeah, it's really good.
Hi, I'm Ilaria and I joined Youth Council around a month ago.
Hi, I'm Adam. I joined Youth Council about 3 months ago.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, as you've mentioned previously, we're here to kind of give an update and give all of the things that we've been doing over the past couple of years. I mean, I've been in my term for about 2 years now, and it's been amazing to see all of the progress that we've been able to make. We've been able to do a lot of research into a lot of the things that are affecting young people around us. And we've been meeting with professionals that are really keen to help us as well and bridge the gap between the services and what we need. And yeah, we've got lots of work, lots of evidence to do that we've been working on, and we're really excited to see where things are going. We're really, it's really good to be invited to these kind of things, but also what we want to do is to put these things into action as well, and not just come and give our piece and give what has been spoken about already. We just want to put it into action and make sure that we're delivering all of the things that we're speaking about. So I'll hand over to Adam to deliver the priorities.
So the purpose of Youth Voice. Firstly, we're here to value the voices of our young residents to help them shape the borough's future. We're also here to expand possibilities to them. We live by the mantra, deciding with us and not for us, which means we're here to ensure that we're represented at every level of decision-making. We'd like to see young people as influencers and co-producers, rather than standing by while decisions are being made. And finally, we're trying to make young residents feel valued and connected to their community.
So we as a youth council wanted to make sure we were doing the absolute best for young people all across Hammersmith and Fulham, and that means speaking to all young people, being as representative as possible and making sure that youth voice is the best across the borough. And these are some of the development areas that we have, and these specifically are things we wanted to improve throughout the borough. So for example, strengthen inclusivity, diversity and reach. And it's just a taste of what we really wanted to do as a youth council to represent young people across the borough. Next slide. Yeah. So a few of the highlights that we've done, what we've been able to complete so far are things like doing research across the borough, as Anastasia said. So for example, we have views of thousands of young people across Hammersmith and Fulham, across different surveys that we've done, across different youth voice projects, for example, drop-in meetings. And it just means that we've been able to be as inclusive as possible through our different youth voice activities. And we've been able to co-produce youth voice strategies, priorities and principles, and getting young people involved in all areas of youth voice to make sure that it's as inclusive and as representative of our views and young people's needs as possible.
Yeah.
So we've been conducting borough-wide research since last June. For example, just a few examples are Summer in the, so that's going to be the next slide, please. Summer in the City Youth Voice and Art Picnic, in which we were able to speak to local artists and young people and get their intentions and opinions and stuff. We've also been collaborating a lot, for example, with Young Hammersmith and Fulham peer researchers and youth board, and also our Action on Disability Youth Board. All around, we're just really pleased with how our research is going and has gone, and we're really looking forward to incorporating it.
Through our following evidence, we were able to capture the views and experience over 2,000 young people's voices, and we're able to find clear priorities in emerging like the research. And honestly, it's helped us understand where the gaps lie within all of these new things. Sorry. Sorry. And this can be seen with many services that we participated with, like children's services and commissioning. From all these departments, including children's services and commissioning, education and school improvement, economic development, people and talent, public health, cultural services, and also community safety. We are also working with the Young Hammersmith and Fulham Foundation and the Subus and the West Youth Zone. And from this, we've been able to have 2 successful meetings on the 19th of September and the 24th of October. And we were able to discover that the leads that we worked with are already being delivered, and that we are actually finding some improvement, but there's still some identified gaps that we need to work on to create a bridge of communication between young people and the resources that we do have.
We have a few questions that we want you to bear in mind. So identify a link chair for each of our priority areas. Support us to develop a governance approach with the relevant policies, accountability committees, and help us to look at opportunities for finalized recommendations to be included in the council business planning. So just while we're going on with the slides, just to keep it in mind.
Thank you so much, guys. So yeah, I think, and in summary of what the young people have said, thank you so much. That was amazing, and particularly with the tech issues as well. In summary, we've had, as Ilaria said, 2 really successful meetings. Matt Sales has been phenomenal. Thank you, Matt, in helping us to identify strategic leads from all of those departments discussed. So it is becoming a council-wide approach to taking forward the young people's priorities. And, I'm thrilled to see that. We're in a place where we've had 2 meetings. We have the 3rd meeting tomorrow, and we've looked at the work that's being delivered. Now, it is a case that there's a lot of amazing work already happening across all of the young people's priorities, and it's been really useful to see that. And the young people aren't coming up with kind of recommendations based, just out of thin air. It's all being kind of evidence based. We know what's being delivered, and a lot of the priorities that young people have got are already being addressed, which is really positive, and we've been able to feed that back. There's just a few small gaps really, and what we're doing with that now is trying to bring that into an action plan. So that's where we are. There's things that we can certainly work on collectively. The community safety team, for example, have been absolutely amazing in doing bespoke sessions with us and thinking through some of the bigger pieces around staying safe on the streets and so on. But I think, Councillor Homan, you suggested that we think about how we can make this a true council-wide approach, and that how we can really embed what the young people are saying and telling us are the issues for them into, council policy going forward, really. So that's kind of the ask of us being here, I think.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for everybody for your presentation. I think for me, it's very much about us trying to work out where those gaps are and where the people sat up here can take it forward on their various different committees or with the different officers that serve their committees. But one of the really important things, I think, for us as councillors and your councillors, your youth councillors representing the 2,000 people or more who responded to your questions and what have you. It's really important to go back and say, well, you told me this and we've managed to do that. And so if we can facilitate the things that you have been told and you've been trying to improve from those 2,000 young people's voices, then that's what we want to do. We want to be here to help you do that. So we are very open to working with you. We can't wave our magic wand and deliver on and do our very best. So I'm going to leave it there and just ask if there are members of the committee who would like to ask particular questions, maybe around your committee areas. I know, for example, Councillor Salus, he chairs the Policy and Accountability Committee that covers crime. And I know that there's been a lot of work in relation to knife crime and youth crime and things. I don't know if you want to start off on that, maybe.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, and thank you all for coming and speaking to us here. I see that you say that in the future you're going to have additional workshops on community safety. I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about who you're expecting to attend or who you would like to attend, and also what form this take and what you're hearing from the workshops as with regards to what young people are saying, what are we missing, both us as a council and the police, what should our priority be?
Yeah, so with regards to crime, that specific area, one of the key gaps that Brenda was talking about that we've been trying to identify is like anonymous reports of crime. So at the moment, we have something called the Fearless campaign, which is where young people are able to report crime anonymously because there's like less fear of the kind of snitch thing going around where people don't want to be caught out for reporting crime. So if more work is able to be done on that, done on having wider access to kind of platforms where young people are able to report crime without being identified themselves, then I think that's something that a lot of young people are asking that they want to see in the borough.
We've had that session with Neil Fairlong and colleagues helped us to identify a number of different leads. And one big area the young people are focusing on is healthy relationships. It's, felt that there's a lot of work being done, but we need to get key messages out to young people about what constitutes healthy relationships and what doesn't. And there's some amazing work going on with our early help services as well. Which we, we're able to share with the young people. And what we've been looking at is the approaches that are being taken forward in the borough. But the key things that kind of you really want to focus on was those messages to young people. And then, as you said, Anastasia, the reporting of crime comes up quite often, but it's just often there's some really good things there, but it doesn't get to young people in the right way. So the information doesn't get to them in a way that they can relate to, or it doesn't just doesn't get to them in the right way. So that's something that we'd like to work on a bit more around the communication of things that are there for young people to young people. So,
Councillor Sleuth.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your response in particular. Just if I could follow up, one issue we hear a lot on our committee, and we've read the case review on the standards of the Met Police as well, is young people do not have trust in the police. You don't have necessarily to tell me your views on it, but what has been the feeling from the workshops you've had? Is this something that's been discussed about how young people interact with the police and the perceptions of them?
Yeah, so we did actually have a meeting during summer where two members of the Met Police actually came along and discussed with us. And one kind of general consensus that was among the young people that were there is that they want more kind of informal interactions like that with the police to build that trust. Oftentimes, I mean, I can't speak for all young people on this matter, but they can seem like impersonal connections where they don't feel like they can approach a police officer freely about things that worry them or things that threaten their safety. So if they are able to come into spaces like that and interact with us on a personal level, like they did during summer, that I think that would help build trust and connections in the police.
Thank you. I think that's enough for me for now.
Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you very much for the presentation. got a few questions, I think. First of all, I'm interested in how you identify what are the priorities. I guess you've obviously reached out to people in terms of getting the responses to the survey, but in terms of the work you do, obviously you're going to be able to, I mean, you could cover almost everything, but I'm interested in how you've identified what your priority areas are. Interested, secondly, in the sort of communications aspect and how that might work, because I think a lot of, you could cover the whole of what the council does, for example, how that could be improved. Thirdly, I guess I'm interested in, there's a lot of the initiatives that you've had in the last 12 months or so, some of which are detailed on the slides. How have you judged whether they've been sort of successful or not? I mean, obviously you've put some things have happened. I'm interested in whether you think that they're successful, how they could be improved, or what other things you might think that you can, do to change them or take them forward if they haven't been, quite hit the mark in terms of what you had sort of wanted them to do.
Anybody want to come in on that?
I'll answer the first question, which I believe is about how we came about choosing the priorities. So as I mentioned, I'm the member of Youth Parliament. We have a youth cabinet, which is formed of the member of Youth Parliament, the youth mayor, deputy member of Youth Parliament, and deputy youth mayor. And in 2022, in March, we ran elections based on our manifesto points, which were staying safe, life skills, mental health, and work experience. And as a result of us being elected into that role, it was kind of assumed those were the 4 key topics that young people were concerned about the most in the borough. And kind of moving forward from that election point, we created a video which was kind of discussing key questions that we wanted to raise within the borough to see what help people actually want. And once we'd kind of gathered responses from those videos that we were able to send out to lots of young people like schools and youth groups, we then met with professionals which kind of facilitate the areas that we were speaking about and seeing where the gaps could be bridged. Because it was often the case where people were asking for things that are actually already happening in the borough. So it was just a thing where we needed the professionals to kind of deliver that to the young people so that they know that's there. So I hope that answers the first question.
I think in addition to that as well, we always feed back to young people, what we found, what we've said, and what we've done about it. And I think particularly in this case as well, we'll be able to do so much more so. This is a kind of a whole change around of approach. Historically, we've been called in to go through the various different boards and partnerships and present to the boards based on kind of things that are already being half delivered in a way. And that's been great, and it's great to get young people's experiences on numerous different things, but this is young people's priorities now driving that forward, and that's why we've really tried to do a huge inclusive research project throughout the whole of the summer. So it's been from June right the way through to the end of October in schools, in youth projects, in our targeted services, in our alternative provision across the whole borough, to speak to over 2,000 young people to really fully identify what it is that they want and need in relation to the priority areas, so that it is evidenced and it is true and it is reaching out. Not all young people want to come to meetings, not all young people want to necessarily come to youth council, although we're making it fun and inclusive, but what we do is reach out really well. So I think it's a case of kind of, for me, we'll know when we've done well if we're able to go back to young people feedback. This is what's changed as a result of what you've told us. And I think, and also I'm part of it, I'm capturing what is being delivered as well, because that's just as important, because there's so much there and that's to be fed back to young people. So I think the idea is going to be that there'll be a video that captures the next steps and all of the findings that can be shared really widely as well with the young people.
Jackie.
Hi, Jackie, I'm Director of Children's Services. Hello. I would just add to the comments that my colleagues have made, which is this has been genuinely co-produced, and so it's not done unto anyone. So it's not that the young people have been told what to do, but equally neither have the young people presented a list of asks that haven't been discussed. And as Brenda keeps reminding me, we've got a third meeting with strategic leads. And that's really important, because it means that there is a coming together, an exploration, and a mutual understanding of what those priorities are, so that as Brenda says and others have said, they could be shared and then everybody held to account because they are agreed. And what we haven't got is the word that Anastasia used, gaps needing to be bridged. We're bridging the gaps as we co-produce them. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other? Councillor Perez.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to you all for the fantastic work that you're doing and for coming here this evening. My name is Natalia Perez, Councillor Perez, and I chair the Health, Adult Social Care Policy Accountability Committee. I just have a question in relation to the young residents in Hammersmith and Fulham. I mean, are there particular groups of young residents that you feel that you want to have more in-depth conversation with in terms of the reach that you're getting? Are there any groups that you want to reach further? That's one question. In terms of, and another question in terms of health and social care, what are the main asks around health? What have the young residents, young people told you? Have you also had conversations with young carers as well? Thank you.
I can probably just kind of give a little bit of an overview of that. So the Young Carer Service, we work really closely with them. In fact, some of the young carers are coming to our Youth Council Open Day tomorrow. I've been involved in kind of the development of the Young Carer Service because I historically work in that area, so massively passionate about young carers. We've certainly captured their views in the research. We are working with Action on Disability and our special schools, but I think I'd like to see us target disabled young people that are in mainstream provision a bit better, and reaching out. So that's something that I'm really trying to do at the moment. I'm also trying to work with young people that are non-verbal as well a bit more. I'm working along with Jack Tizard School to be able to do that, because I think that's, you know, just as important and a challenge, but just as important. And the school is amazing at working with non-verbal young people. I think, you know, from kind of where they are now to what we've done, you know, through the summer, to have a Youth Voice Art in the Park session that was really inclusive and had lots of different young people is amazing. We've got disabled young people and young people with additional needs in Youth Council, as well as, you know, young people who are looked after and those that are care experienced as well. We've got, we're trying to increase the diversity, but there's always room to go. And I think it's just making sure that everything we do is inclusive as it can be, and that we really, really are continuing to reach out. And I think this was focused because it was focused on the young people's priority areas. So we haven't asked young people about everything because we haven't got capacity to do that, and also because it's based in at the moment on the young people's priorities. But that's not the end. It's kind of, let's get this actions and move forward with the young people's priority areas, and then, you know, we can still do more. Sexual health and relationships is something that we've been working on alongside the healthy relationship agenda. We've had a session recently, which was fantastic, with 10 Hammersmith Broadway, who are massively underused, and wanted to keep asking us for help with the Youth Council to help them get the message out. And the resilience service, our early help services, just looking at that and how we get the message. And again, you know, even though this is the priority areas, we do lots of other things as well with Youth Council. So that's, yeah, main area of focus, I think. Anything else, guys, that you want to add around health? Yeah.
Jackie wants to add something around health, I think.
So, okay, thank you. I think it would be really helpful, Councillor, to involve health. They're not listed on the list of strategic leads, which are largely internal. But we want healthy relationships to be seen across the piece and not just siloed to one bit of the council or a particular service, or say it's about children's. And certainly when it comes to procurement of various health services, for that focus to be broader than just physical health, considering mental health, but also the sort of the areas in between, which are about healthy relationships and health and well-being. So your support in that would be brilliant. Thank you.
I think there's a massive takeaway there for you, Councillor Perez, definitely. Yeah. So, yeah. Do you want to come back on that at all?
No, absolutely. No, thank you very much. I think you've got that.
Just to very quickly say, we are working with public health as well. Just a couple of colleagues have been involved in that piece around mental health.
Yes, thank you. And that's really important, but it's more than just public health.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Thanks. Councillor Daly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you so much for those presentations. I am the chair of Housing and Homelessness, and we haven't spoken very much about housing. In each of our policy and accountability meetings for the past 18 months, we've been talking about temporary accommodation and such things as kind of no-fault evictions. And in all of our schools across the borough, there are students whose families are living in temporary accommodation. And one voice that we don't ever hear in the policy and accountability is that of kind of the youth who are facing those kind of circumstances, a really tough way to kind of make your way through school and through life. Did housing and homelessness make it into any of your priority areas?
It didn't on this piece because it was the young people's identified priorities, but absolutely, obviously, is a huge priority. And I certainly think we could look at, trying to gauge the views of some young people that experience temporary accommodation, absolutely, because it would have a huge impact. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we could consider next year, guys. Yeah.
I would really appreciate having some voices coming in and kind of talking about it from that perspective. I think it's often quite forgotten that these are families, and that would be a really, really sort of good move forwards for us. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I think just on that, I think as councillors, all of us have had families that have come to us because they're overcrowded and they've got problems because their children haven't got room to do homework. They sometimes haven't got room to sleep properly, so it does have quite a serious impact on young people's ability to learn, but also potentially their mental health and everything. So I think it is quite interesting. So Councillor Daly, yeah, I'm conscious that we don't want to pile loads of work onto the Youth Council, but I do think it is potentially an issue that it would be really good to have some young voices involved in. So to just make sure our housing officers all really appreciate the impact. So
yeah, I think it's really powerful, and I recognise that it's not part of your core direction right now, but it would be great to have some conversations about bringing it in maybe later on.
Councillor Vaughan, you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, I mean, just on that, I mean, I think the issue, I suppose, is about priorities, because clearly you can do so much and have the things that you want to achieve. But I think just to add, I mean, I obviously chair the Economy, Arts and sort of Public Realm panel. There will be, I mean, you can look at what we've got on our agendas, but it would be interesting to know, there may be some issues there that you're interested in that have a sort of cut across. So it would be useful to hear from young people and yourselves on some of those things, to the extent that when we're doing work on our policy and accountability committees, which are sort of, many of them, as you can see, where there are specific issues that you've got priorities on and you want to feed in the sort of youth angle to that, or just the angle of yourselves and other young people. I think that would be really helpful. To the extent there are things, as Councillor Daly said, outside your sort of immediate priorities that you're working on that you think you'd like to speak on, whether that's housing and homelessness or whatever, I think it would be similarly great to get you involved in that, or for you to come along to some of those meetings as necessary.
I'm going to bring Jackie in, but I think the point of having the strategic leads sort of system hopefully will pick up on that, so that we can make sure that the youth voice is heard. But Jackie.
Yes, I think we really welcome the interest from everybody. Thank you. And I think what we have a message to those strategic leads and to other directorates is to also take the lead in coming forward and being interested. What we mustn't do is just ask the young people to be a voice and for everything. And I think it's incumbent on all directorates to find ways of engaging those young people, feeding it into the various packs, and to ensure that there's connection and that thinking is there and represented. So I think the points that have been made are really welcome. We just need to think about the mechanics around it, so it's broader than just Brenda.
So, I mean, just to, so one thing that springs to mind is we had a discussion at my pack about the bid for the London Borough of Culture 2025, which is going to take place over the next few months. I'm assuming that will engage young people in schools, but that would be something that would be
We're
sort of,
already really
an
heavily
immediate,
involved. Sorry to interrupt.
an immediate priority, I guess.
We all are already involved. So we've been part of the bid, and the Youth Council have put in comments and thoughts, and we've had a couple of meetings with Val and various other colleagues in the run up to the bid being put in. Yeah, so we are involved in that, and I think that we're involved in kind of lots of other pieces of work as well across the council. So yeah, it's really positive that kind of, you know, lots of different departments want us to be involved as well.
I think David's rapidly writing some actions down from this, but one of the other actions I would say from what you've just said, Brenda, is, you know, the reports that come through to the policy, to the PACs, probably need to say that the Youth Council have been involved in it, and so, you know, so that Councillor Vaughan or whoever, you know, it just needs to be a one-liner to say that. Yeah, I don't know how we establish a system for that, but yeah.
So could we just look at that to make sure that that doesn't become a tick box?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Overly bureaucratic. So
yeah,
there was only one Brenda.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm aware of that. Yeah,
thank you.
But I'm thinking more along the strategic leads being instructed that they should make sure that, you know, there is, when reports are coming up, that they've got that in. So.
We've got the names of the, I'm thinking if we should kind of share the names of the strategic leads that have Matt's helped us to identify, then there could be kind of some responsibility there for feeding back the youth voice co-production with young people to the PACs. That would be helpful, I think. Which
kind of leads me to my next question, because it's all leading to like lots of work that you already do. Ella Laria, is that how you pronounce it? You said you'd been a member of the Youth Council for a couple of months. I'm just wondering, they seem to do a lot of work. So is it a lot of work? And how are you finding it as a relatively new member? Because the things that we're discussing tonight, I really don't want to add to your workload, but I want to make sure that it's effective for you, what we now do after this evening's meeting.
Well, I found it really like enjoyable in a sense, because it doesn't really seem like work. It's more like a discussion that you have with people that do make changes in our community, and we kind of give our input. So we just sit around and discuss with leaders and go, okay, so this is the issue. What should we do? What do we think as youth? And I really think it really helps kind of engage the gap, because we kind of say our input and we know that's our input being taken further. So I think it's good.
So it's great you're finding it an enjoyable experience and don't see it like work. That's great. Does anybody else want to comment on the amount of time you put in and the energy? Because it seems to take an awful lot of meetings with different strategic leads, etc. Adam?
I mean, we really appreciate that we're being listened to. A lot of what we do is, as my colleague said, a lot of discussion, and we've got a wonderful support system. We've got Brenda, who does an amazing amount of work for us, which really enables us to be able to have these discussions.
I also think what Brenda does for us is really organized. For example, the way it's really planned is that unless you volunteer to do something yourself, like for example, we're doing stuff with the mayor, or like with elections, and how there needs to be more young people involved in elections. And for example, a few of us are in a separate group. So it doesn't mean that if you're part of the youth council, you have to be a part of every single thing that's going on. It means that if you come to a meeting, there might be, for example, when we had the sexual health and relationship topic, where representatives from 10 Hammersmith Broadway came in and talked to us about a topic. It means that there's a schedule for every meeting and every topic that will come across, but there's also other opportunities for you to get involved in. So it means that you can handle your time, and for example, all of us in different like stages of schooling, it means that you can choose what you want to be involved in, and it means that everyone's really passionate about what they're doing, and it means that we can therefore create actions which actually do take place, and we've seen it in the past few months and however long we've all been a part of the youth council. So it means that it's really efficient.
Great, thank you. Has anybody else on the committee got any further questions? thank you for taking more time this evening and coming along. And thank you. I think Adam and precisely you came and made a good contribution to what was a very strategic piece of work that we're doing around intergenerational working. And you're always welcome to contribute, but we don't want to put lots of burdens on you. And we've got quite a few actions to take away. I think Councillor Daly and Councillor Perez have got two particular issues that they can go away with. But I think there's also about how we make sure those strategic leads keep talking to us and keep talking to you to get some actions on all of the work that you've been doing, because that's the important thing, to get action, not just to talk about it, and for you to be able to go back to those 2,000 plus young people that you've heard from. So can I just say thank you very, very much for coming this evening. Much appreciated. And I think you've got a big day ahead of you tomorrow. Is that right? Yep. Well, I hope that goes well. I wish you the best of luck with that. So thank you very much. Thank you
very much.
Okay, we'll just take a 2 or 3 minute break before we go on to the next item on the agenda.
Green and then
Right, let's reconvene. Thank you. Are we back on Zoom? The second item on the agenda this evening is the update in terms of our continuing response to the cost of living crisis. We did look at this at the board last year briefly. At that time, the alliance that we built in the borough of addressing as best we can the cost of living crisis was sort of quite new. We're now probably a year or so on, I think. So it seemed to be quite a good time to get an update. And obviously the situation in the country economically has not got an awful lot better. So there is a continuing need for the borough to support our residents as best we can and be aware of the cost of living crisis. So it seemed appropriate to have an update this evening. So I am going to go over to Matt Sales, first of all, to give us a brief sort of officer presentation on where we are. Sorry, I understand we've got some declarations of interest.
Yes, apologies. Perhaps should have mentioned at the beginning. I'm a trustee at Hammersmith United Charities, which funds Crosslight and H&F Food Bank. So just want to put this on the record.
I think that's non-pecuniary, Councillor, but we'll note it. Councillor Perez.
Thank you very much, Chair. The same situation for me. I'm also a trustee of HUC and also part of the grants committee. So no pecuniary interest as well. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? No, okay, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Is David you attempting? There we go. I'm Matt Sales. I'm an assistant director here, and I've been our officer lead for the cost of living programme. I was going to introduce Bathsheba.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bathsheba Moore. I'm the programme lead for cost of living.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to be short, just 4 or 5 slides. So we've got hopefully a detailed report in your pack, which shows how the cost of living continues to be a priority for the administration. And we've had a 10 million worth of package of support across this year and last year. And that builds on the council's compassionate local government track record and of keeping costs low for residents. We brought an update a year ago to this board, and again, a shorter update in April 23. I'm going to touch today on some of the context for the crisis today, talk about some of the impacts from our support schemes, and also talk about the range of support. And very pleased to be welcomed by 3 members of our Alliance steering group as well, who I'm sure will introduce themselves in a short while, if that's okay. Okay, David. There we go. So in terms of context, I'm sure everyone's aware inflation is falling and is expected to fall, I think, this month again. But we've had however long, 18, 24 months of high inflation, and that erodes people's spending power, basically, and particularly low-income households, because their lived experience of inflation is higher than other groups because a higher proportion of their income goes on essentials such as rent and food. Food remains really high, 12% inflation in September, and some research showing almost half of adults, unbelievably, are spending less on food because of the crisis. Here we go. Interest rates stabilised, but they're still predicted to be between 4 and 5% in 24. Average energy bills are going up by another 5% in January, and so it's about 50, 60% higher than 2 years ago. So that's quite a massive difference for households up and down the borough in terms of those energy costs. And the government's autumn statement gave no certainty for us that there will be a continuation of the Household Support Fund, which has been really a central part of our anti-poverty strategy this year beyond March 24. There's one final click, David, sorry. Apologies, board. David did advise me to take out the animations, so apologies about this. Well, we'll just have to play catch up. Thank you.
I think you just have to carry on
Yeah.
talking to the report and it will appear eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. Top local issues remain food, fuel, and household finances, unsurprisingly. Okay, in terms of some of our support impacts, so the impacts of the support that we've given, we've set up in last year a dedicated cost of living team. That's received today about 15,000 calls from 4,500 households across the borough. They've also undertaken assessments with 1,500 residents. So that's assessments for help in things like food, fuel, school uniform, disabled grants, council tax support, a whole range of different things. And in terms of the people that been the residents that been our advice team have been helping, 80% have been social housing tenants, both ourselves and RSLs. High proportion are women, high proportion are single households and with and without dependents. And they're typically between age 35 to 64. But you can see in terms of the stats that the crisis is impacting on communities and residents right across the borough in terms of different demography. Our web pages, 14,500 visitors, 48,000 pages. We've issued the council, this is almost 2,200 fuel vouchers since the start of the crisis. And the food bank has also issued more, and they're giving 49 and £10, 59 vouchers at the moment for people on prepayment meters. We've had a number of community support activities, a number of successful warm welcomes, which we're restarting again this winter. 800 people have attended almost 26 pop-ups that we've had for cost of living advice and support. And you've got some stats at the bottom there of what we've achieved up to September of this financial year, just in terms of some of our support schemes. I'll go on just to talk about those shortly. I'll carry on speaking. So we've got 25 schemes in the strategy in this financial year, and they're a range of statutory, discretionary and partner support services. We've worked with a number of partners in the Cost of Living Alliance and the steering group on shared priorities. That's included, it's going to come up on screen shortly. We've got a new cost of living booklet, which is out now. We're distributing to GP practices, to alliance partners and community centres. We are also providing one-off energy payments to over 2,000 residents. Yep, thank you, Councillor Perez, has the booklet before her. One-off energy payments to 2,000 residents, including disabled children and their families, and disabled adults and care experienced young people. These are things other places aren't doing, and we're really proud of that. We're also giving up to 500 households a grant with their energy efficiency, which is for a new scheme called Winter Ready Homes. We've got new for this year, a crisis prevention fund, the first time we've had this as well, which is a cash first approach of assistance to families and individuals in crisis. And 31,000 has been given out so far on that. But we've got a lot of applications pending that the team's looking at the moment. Other things we're giving, grants for food, for debt, for warm welcomes again, big Christmas lunch for 500 older residents this Christmas. We've got support around business, and there's a priority under that in the report and more detail there. And longer term, we're now looking towards a longer strategic approach to poverty. The council has a new corporate plan, which Cabinet agreed last week, and that identifies tackling poverty as a key priority. We'll just open it up to comments and questions from the board and any observations on how we could strengthen our response.
Thank you, Matt. I think I'd like to bring in our guests, if I may, because obviously you've been working with the borough over the last probably 18 months, 2 years on this, and we couldn't do it without you, I think is very true. It's something I'm very conscious of. So I think we probably have quite a good relationship, but is there more we can be doing? How do you guys feel about it? And what's the need out there these days for you guys that are on the front line in the voluntary sector? I don't know who wants to sort of start off by maybe a couple of minutes on the way you think things are at the moment, 18 months, 2 years on. I'm looking at Phil, only because he knows I was likely to pick on him first.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Howman. Phil Story from Hammersmith and Fulham Food Bank. And just two big questions that you asked us. Thank you. What's the need out there? And to give you a picture from Food Bank's perspective, we were feeding about 1,000 people a month in 2022. When we got to January 2023, that doubled to 2,000 people a month, and it never dropped from that date. So for all of 2023, we fed over 2,000 people a month. And in the last 2 months, it's gone up to 2,500. So that steady curve of people kind of got to last Christmas, and then suddenly they had used every resource they had. And so as a small charity, kind of doubling in size suddenly has taken a lot of effort and a lot of the year to get used to. The need out there is definitely still for food and for fuel. They're the basics, and bottom line, it is that financial cash first approach which people need. I think moving on to how the alliance has worked, it was exactly what was needed in the borough. I think during COVID, the council supported the voluntary sector really well. There was really good communication and partnership. And then after COVID, I think everyone was just overwhelmed and swamped and went back to their own activities. And this alliance has managed to get the voluntary sector back in the room with the statutory sector on a bit of business. It's been really productive, and certainly the approach of having task and finish groups has been really useful for that alliance, so that we can focus on one piece of work and make it really productive and get things over the line. So personally, I've been involved in the signposting tool, and that's been really useful to have the support of the likes of Bathsheba, who's been amazing actually, and pulling together those providers to present their business case to us and to get us to a point where we can look at the major signposting tools in the market and decide if they're right for this borough. Because we drew up a long list of exactly what we wanted from a tool like that. And top of that list was that it was open access, not just for agencies, but for residents as well. And so we've had a really good look at all the tools that are out there on the market and come to and got ourselves to a stage where we're at procurement.
Thank you, Phil. Stephen, Sarah, do either of you want to add to that, or your observations on how things are going and the need?
Yeah, so Crosslight is giving money and debt advice, and similar to what Phil said, we had very high inquiries. Normally during the summer holiday there is a drop, but this year it never happened. And also what is a little bit new, we have a lot of, because of the housing crisis with rent arrears or the rent increase, we have more clients who were able to manage in the private sector, and they really struggle now. And in particular families, it's very upsetting, you know, that they are in school and now the landlord has increased the rent quite significantly. So they had a universal credit, but it simply doesn't balance anymore. So that's a new thing that we have seen more often. Then working together was really good. I think one thing we said is going forward, it would be good to have positive activities that are free, on low cost, and widely communicated. So we have a lot of single mothers, and so summer holidays, there is a big need. Children, but also equally for maybe elderly people, because there is often certain things are out there, but not always the different communities are aware that there are offers that are low cost or free.
Sarah, maybe you could tell me what People Arise now do as well, because I'm not so familiar with your organisation, so that'd be helpful.
No problem. My name is Sarah Lumgear from People Arise Now. I'm the operations manager there. And People Arise Now focuses on things that would help people thrive in the community, especially where there's been a background of crime. We started off work helping family members of offenders, basically, who were feeling like they were going through the sentence that their child was going through, but not knowing who to turn to, especially when there are issues of language and cultural differences, and just helping people to navigate the system. And now we do a lot of preventative work as well. So that's in the community, that's with young people. And in terms of the cost of living crisis and working with the Alliance, it's been a massive eye-opener. Previously, we'd been got council support, especially from Councillor Suslus and Councillor Ben Coleman coming to our events and supporting our beneficiaries and some of the issues that they have. But we have found more and more of our time is used literally just being on the phone to the council, trying to help people get through and find out about their benefits, getting answers about their benefits. We've had a case where it's taken us a year to get somebody's pension credits, several months to get somebody's bus pass, you know, when they've become a certain age. And so we'd say that in terms of the work that we've seen, it's, of course, it's just echoing everything that's been said already. People are struggling, but in terms of accessing the council, customer service wise, that has been a real struggle, and it's just seemed to have got worse and worse. There's been occasions where we've called, been on the phone an hour, it's hung up, called, been on the phone an hour. I'm sure you've heard these things already. But what the Alliance has done at a strategic level has just shown a level of teamwork that was really quite amazing. I have to admit, I didn't really think we were going to be listened to. Maybe because I'm new to to working at this level. But being a signposting group and realizing actually our opinions do matter and that they are here to listen to what residents are thinking, that they do want to know what it's like from our beneficiaries' point of view, and it's really taken into consideration. That's been a massive thing for our I guess that's our contribution.
Thank you. And just one of the comments you just made, you might be interesting to know that one of the items that I've got scheduled in the future is resident experience. So some of the comments you've just made might fit quite nicely into the report that comes on resident experience in the future. Councillor Harvey, would you like to introduce yourself, Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Harvey, Rebecca Harvey, Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion and Community Safety and Lead Member on Cost of Living. I just wanted to pick up on that point about customer services, because we are doing work behind the scenes. We've met with officers to talk about how things can be improved, and it has been an ongoing process to get there. But we definitely are listening, and that's the whole point of having our Alliance group and our cost of living conference and workshops that we've been having. So we're taking on board lots of different feedback and then looking at how we can improve things for everybody. And it's been really great working with these people. You guys have been amazing, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, any questions from the committee? Councillor Brockbank-Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think this is a very interesting report, which I've looked at very carefully. I'm particularly struck by the
what we're doing. I can only speak in terms of what we're doing. And it's been a mix of, yes. So we purchased a grant with an organisation called the Fuel Bank Foundation. They're one of the leading kind of national organisation in this space. They have secured some funding from energy companies and others that we, as one of their partners, benefits from. But we used some government funding to purchase those grants. Right. And we have also, what's different this financial year, as part of the 10 million support that we're providing to residents last year. And this year, the council has put in its own funding to support the cost of living strategy. I don't know why I'm bending down, which has allowed us to extend our schemes. So, for example, prepayment meters, we're putting council funding in to support residents with prepayment meters.
Okay, thank you. How much of a contribution then in percentage terms is the council putting into this scheme?
in this financial year, it'll be more council than government funding for prepayment meters.
So what, 55, 45 or
doing some maths, yeah, probably 60-40 or something around that.
right, okay. Because it is the situation that the utility companies do have hardship funds themselves. So how do you organise that people apply for everything that they're able to? Because perhaps the utility company's scheme is better for certain people, for certain situations, and perhaps the council scheme is better for others. How do you logistically work out what the best thing to do is?
So specifically around prepayment meters, the support is to residents who have been cut off or at high risk or just about to cut off, okay? So they've got an immediate fuel crisis around prepayment meters for their families and children's and households. So that's a specific support that we offer, but you're talking more, how do we assess the kind of broader needs of help and support that residents might have? And that's through our cost of living support team. So that's the team that's received 14,500 calls, I think it was, from 4,500 households since it was set up last year. They've done with 1,500 residents assessments of the help and support they need. So, for example, do they need help accessing council tax support scheme that the council has, which is a very good one? Do they need help with clothing for their school-aged children? Do they need a referral to the food bank, etc.? So they go through that kind of assessment with them. And as part of that, they will look at things outside of the control, outside of the council. So whether that be, via energy companies, and the booklet that Councillor Perez showed earlier includes a number of schemes, charities that residents can also access for help and support outside of the council.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, no? No? Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Daly.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for presenting that, and thank you everybody for coming and talking to us. I am the chair of the Housing and Homelessness Pack, and some of the areas that we've been looking at is the cost of fuel, and the cost of fuel in particular in social housing and council housing. In November, we had a really interesting discussion about greening the housing stock and what that would mean for people living with low incomes, and a whole area around retrofitting insulation and the impact that might have on the kind of the fuel costs outgoing. And I suppose one of my questions for this group on that would be, do you have any sense of the point at which the energy costs will tip, so that at what point I think of kind of in a long-term approach, is there a real benefit in rolling forwards with greening that housing stock, bringing in insulation, or should we carry on focusing on getting fuel vouchers out to people? Thanks.
Well, I'm not sure who's best qualified to answer though.
So
Matt might.
I'll have a go. I think it's both. And I think that's what we're doing here. You've obviously got immediate crisis and that needs to be helped. That clearly that would be the priority. But as part of our strategy this year, for example, we've launched Winter Ready Homes, which is supporting
measures can mean that fuel voucher lasts a bit longer, or the meter in their prepayment meter lasts a little bit longer. That's incredibly important to the household budget.
Thank you. I'm also really interested in the household kind of discretionary housing payments. And I'm guessing that you're all quite involved in talking to people who are really needing those. And can you give me a sense of what sort of impact that has, and where there are any kind of snags in the system? Is everybody getting the help that they need, or are more people being pushed into temporary accommodation because of a gap in getting kind of discretionary funds to the people who need them most?
Yeah, I mean, we do quite a lot of DHP applications, and I think obviously it gets more difficult every year, as you know, to apply because the pot gets smaller. So I think some of the residents are frustrated if they are on the downsizing list, and it seems that there's no progress for them in, you know, they don't have offers or whatever, and then they think, oh, I have to apply again, especially if they're very vulnerable. So we had this year, some of our clients were quite frustrated. They say, look, I applied every year for DHP. I have to wait very long until it's done. I have rent arrears. I get, you know, letters from the landlord, you know, notice of seeking possession or threats of eviction. And then the same happens again next year. And at the same time, I was not offered anything suitable to downsize. So I think that's maybe one thing where people are a little bit frustrated. And some of the most vulnerable clients, I think they sometimes miss to apply for it. So I think that's, you know, if there is a delay for them to apply, and then it takes long to get the DHP, I think that's an issue.
I think Councillor Perez, you want to come in on that point?
Yes, so I'm thinking in that point. So we've heard in the news the issues around bidding wars for private rented accommodation. And I know from casework as well, I've come across families that have lived in the borough, in the private sector for 6-7 years with children going to local schools. Suddenly, their landlord asks them to leave the property, and seeking alternative accommodation is impossible in the private sector. So is this an issue that you're seeing on a regular basis, that bidding war situation where basically a private landlord may give a tenancy to the person that bids the highest?
The point I was going to make, which is kind of fits in with this exact questioning, is post-COVID, obviously, you know, evictions were allowed again. So I'm assuming that there was a bit of a spike to catch up, and we've never really dropped down from that spike. It feels that way to me from what I've seen from casework, but I don't know if that's your experience as well, which fits in with the same kind of themes that you were both talking about.
Yeah, I think it's definitely true. We see that a lot more, you know, that people who have been in the community for a long time, and are in private accommodation, the landlord puts up the rent quite significantly, 20, 30% and then it's simply not viable for them anymore. And also DHPs, they're not really helpful because it's not, you know, with a DHP application, we have to show that it is something temporary at least, that there is a way out for whoever is applying. And if they are private tenants, then it's very difficult to prove or show that actually there is something available for them in the foreseeable future. So that is a challenge we see.
Councillor Denny, do you want to come back on that?
I'd like to just ask one more question really on that, because you're right that it's meant to be temporary, and actually the situation at the moment is that income is too low and people can't afford the basics. And they can't afford fuel or food and housing costs. Now we all sit in what is in other boroughs, kind of in other areas called kind of scrutiny committees, but we have policy and accountability committees. So one area that we're allowed to look at and investigate, and we have a remit for, is looking around policy areas. What would you like to see the Housing and Homelessness Policy and Accountability Committee investigate that could make the difference to how this borough responds to that poverty and that need at the moment? Magic wand stuff. It's Christmas, right?
Whether magic wand stuff is going to be deliverable is another matter, but you can always ask.
Yeah, obviously the clients always would say, is there more council housing? That will be the magic thing. Obviously that's something. And also key worker flats, you know, people who have actually really roots in the community, serve the community, but struggle to pay the rent in private sector. And then I think sometimes the transparency, you know, that they really know what is my chance, and also places they can go and really talk with, you know, your team or officers and really find out, you know, what is the plan, and maybe, you know, it sounds maybe a little bit harsh, but what is the plan that they can stay until the school year ends, or you know, plans that at least the negative effect for the vulnerable people is not as bad as it is at the moment. And I think that would help, at least, you know, that families or people know, you know, I get supported, or I could get something until the school year change, or, you know, not that it is great, but if it's unrealistic that that family would get council housing in the foreseeable future, that there will be a social worker or a team who really works with them and say, look, what is realistic for you? What's the best solution, and how can we support you as a family unit?
Councillor Brockbank Fowler.
Thank you, Chairman. When we were in administration, we brought in the council tax support scheme, which has been continued ever since. Now, this is obviously very important, and I'm glad that it continues. However, on page 4, it said that, and I noticed this from last year, that you were not using bailiffs ever to collect council tax. And what I wondered was how much council tax you're losing because of that, if it's not pursued at all for those who are able to pay.
I think we can probably get exact figures sent to Councillor Brockbank Fowler, but from the many conversations I've had with Councillor Ree about this, I think our collection rate is as good as it ever has been by having the ethical debt collection policy. I don't know, Councillor Harvey, I don't know if you can add to that, but I know certainly from my conversations with Councillor Ree, it's not had a negative impact.
I mean, last year it was about 97%. I just wondered if that was varying while we have the cost of living.
I'm not aware of it varying, but it is a very important thing that we do this during a cost of living crisis. It is a very important thing that we do this during a cost of living crisis for our residents.
But we can get you the collection rate definitely from officers, the exact one.
Thank you very much.
I think it also comes to cabinet on a regular basis, doesn't it? So
it doesn't. I think nearer budget time. I think in January.
We'll probably be looking at it next in January, then, Councillor. So yeah, Councillor Salute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the contributions, and Matt for the presentation. I think one thing, it was very good and gave us a big picture of everything we're doing. I just wanted to focus on one item. Of course, last year in very challenging circumstances, both long-term, 10 years of, is it 56% real-term cuts to our budget? And then also the disastrous budgets last autumn, we still were able to find £1 million specifically for cost of living support. Do we have an idea of where that 1 million went and what exactly it supported and how it supported residents?
In the back of the report, there's a table, and it's got 25, roughly, I think, support schemes, which forms part of our strategy this year. A number of those effectively been funded and supported by the council's £1 million. It includes, for example, some of the support around housing, because there are some restrictions around government use of household support fund for housing. So we've used it for some of the housing areas, but a number of those are funded but through the council funding. It's allowed us to go more, to extend schemes and reach more residents. I'd have to come back to you on the specific ones, but yeah, it's all from that table.
Thank you. You mentioned the household support fund, and I'm pretty sure I read at the time of the latest autumn statement that the Chancellor would be withdrawing this from next April. So what do we expect the impact to be on HNF residents as a result? Because I imagine from this and what you said that it was a lot of money for a cost of living support fund.
Yeah, the household support fund, which was a government grant that's existed from during COVID and then became essential as part of the council's anti-poverty strategy since that point. Yeah, there was no announcement in the autumn statement from the Chancellor. Our expectation at the moment is that it will end in March 2024. The government still hasn't confirmed that. They've written to say they will keep it under review. It's not helping ourselves or any in local government plan for the future. And for us, it's been a key source of funding to support residents through the cost of living. It's really been crucial. We're currently considering and looking at the impacts and implications from that and what we might need to do. But yeah, the lack of certainty around it is very difficult to deal with, and the consequences for residents from the lack of funding and the support is equally more important.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just follow up on that. Do we think we will have any clarity on that by January when this committee is due to look at the budget?
We don't know, and finance colleagues think it might go as late as the spring budget, but we don't know at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Perez.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you please tell us a little bit more about the signposting tool that's being developed? I understand that it's a great initiative in terms of joining forces between all the key partners and making the process of referring more efficient.
Yeah, sure. So I've worked in the borough for over 20 years and kind of seen that history of there being signposting tools and not being and we're kind of at that lowest ebb, if you like. So coming out of COVID, there wasn't really a good tool to connect agencies together. The way that residents move into poverty and use that tool to enable people to map their way out of poverty and build the routes out of crisis through connections and through those partnerships.
Excellent. Sounds like a very good tool in terms of that preventative advice and stopping crisis from escalating and becoming more complex. It's good to hear as well that it will have a feature to refer for more complex cases, and it can help people move out of the challenging situation. So, and when have you got a timeline in terms of the implementation?
Hi, Councillor Perez. Thank you for that question. As Phil said, the key behind this is the connections. It's got a real potential to make those links within the community and extend our reach. And certainly talking to colleagues across the organisation, there's a need, there's definitely a gap being identified. And so what we're hoping is that this is going to be the starting point of developing that further engagement, further advice and support, building into maybe referrals. The time frame for this hopefully will be delivering in March, April. It's a little bit ambitious. There's a lot of work to do to kind of bed it down through the organisation. But the key thing here is that it's a really good example of our partnership working with our alliance partners. They've done an awful lot of work in developing the specification, the long list of things that they'd like to see. It's a big shopping list and it's an exciting one as well. It's got massive potential in terms of trying to put into place those kind of factors around advice, support, referral, and bringing them together in a joined up way.
And it's worth just saying that from the Alliance and also actually the work that we do in the food strategy group, you know, a lot of, you know, a year ago, we were asking the question, what do people want to see? And actually it's the signposting tool came top, both in the Alliance and in the food strategy group. So I think everyone has felt that gap across all of the voluntary sector.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been fed back through all the workshops and conferences, communication, engagement, those seem to be the key ones.
Fantastic. Good luck in the next chapter. Thank you.
Councillor Vaughan, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I should say, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for the, on behalf of the sector as well, for the enormous amount of work that's been going on to support residents. I think the report brings out, you know, the thousands of residents and families that you've been supporting and continue to do that in these extremely difficult times, including guiding them through helping and assisting and guiding them through a process to claim the number of schemes that are out there that people are have benefited from seems large. I mean, I guess in many cases you wish that you could help further, I guess, in a lot of that. So firstly, to sort of put on record my thanks for all the work that you've done in extremely difficult circumstances to support residents. I wonder though, so the two things, I think one refers back to what Bathsheba's just said. I suppose the question is, where are we now in terms of sort of stock versus flow? Because there's a lot of numbers that come up here, but I'm not sure that they're necessarily 2,500 households overall, or whether you're supporting, how many sort of households or residents are we supporting, you know, several different schemes, and when they come for advice, you then find there are several other things that they need to access via, you know, a number of you in terms of the organisations, and how much are sort of people, you know, they benefit from one or two things and then sort of, but don't need all of the other stuff. So be interested in sort of what's the sort of overall stock of people that we've helped at the moment, because it's probably not 2,500, it's probably been a lot more than that. But I think, Phil, what you were saying, the sort of flow of people then coming on through is still increasing a bit. And to what extent are we sort of helping those 2,500 or however many families it is sort of continue to provide support, you know, in what continue to be sort of difficult times? So just interested in gauging all of that. I think the second thing is, and I think it probably just adds on to what's been said already, is to what extent does this alliance model is the sort of thing that we need to continue in sort of more, in inverted commas, sort of normal times? Because it seems as though there will always be a need for advice, support and everything else for residents, and navigating what are often complex situations in terms of the claiming the stuff that they might be entitled to are difficult enough at the best of times. And I guess, is that what we're sort of aiming for in terms of the work that you were referring to, Bathsheba? And if not, you know, presumably it ought to be the sort of thing that we're looking to do. I mean, you're in the odd position of wanting to have fewer clients in some ways in the work that you do, but and hopefully that will come in time. But and you know, I suppose there's also what are the lessons we can learn about increasing support to you and others as the voluntary sector in, you know, difficult times, and well, to the extent that we can learn lessons, and you know, flexing that as necessary. Sorry, I hope that's three questions in there. I think there are, Chair, despite your face.
I think we've got the gist of it, Councillor Vaughan. Who would like to go first?
Have a go at one of the questions.
You have a go first.
So earlier intervention, so they never get to food crisis. And, you know, certainly that was part of the ambitions we had around the cash first approach. And, you know, we used a lot of food bank data to show that every time the government made their cost of living payments, food bank numbers dipped, you know. And so when people have money in their pocket, they spend it on food, they spend it on fuel, they spend it on the essentials, and they don't come to food banks. So we're trying to use this work as a way of how do we move it up the chain so that food bank isn't needed so much and isn't the first point of contact, but becomes the last point of contact. And so I'm really interested, especially with the proposed loss of the household support fund from central government, is how do we keep that cash first approach and try and get simple solutions to people not needing to get to food bank use in the first place. And I think the cash first approach that's been put in place is really ambitious. It's really broad. It takes everything that was part of the household support fund. I'm really interested in putting £30, £50 in somebody's pocket for a week to really simply, really quickly to get them to spend it on food and not need food bank for that time that they're seeing Citizens Advice or Crosslight, getting the practical help they need and getting themselves back to stability. And that's not the system we've got at the moment, but maybe that's the system we move towards with a longer term commitment to cash first, if that's possible.
Matt Sells, I think you were going to come in on that as well.
Yeah, I think part of the questions was around number of households we're going to be supporting. It's a simple question and not a simple answer. So across the year, just throw a couple more numbers at you. Well, I hope through the totality of the funding, I think it's about 4. That's just an example. So certainly we're reaching more than 2,000 households as you go, but that might have just been an example.
Just on the point of the 15,000 calls, even if there's not a direct referral to the food bank or something, it may well be that the phone call picked up a signpost and they've gone off and got support somewhere else. Or would we be aware and that would be logged if that was the case?
So yeah, we've got records. So they come more from the assessments done with residents on the help and support they need. There's 1,500 unique residents have had that, but there's thousands of issues that they've looked at, the advice team, on behalf of those 15.
Multiple directions. I'd say about 90% of our beneficiaries may start with one issue, but then quickly it transforms to at least 7. We have to try and limit them each time they come in terms of how many issues we can deal with. But often it's multiple things because they've held it in. And then they found that, okay, once you've helped them, they'll know if there's a family member or there's somebody else. And so I'd just say within the poorly reached communities, that obviously is a bigger issue.
Councillor Daly, Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Daly. Councillor Harvey.
Around my laptop. I just wanted to go back to that question about how many people we've helped, because what Matt said is correct. It's really difficult to put exact numbers on it. But I think one thing, just picking up on the council tax support, is a really good example. If you think there's approximately, I think about 85,000 households in the borough, roughly thereabouts. And in Hammersmith and Fulham, we're one of only 34 councils who don't have any minimum payment.